one. And ladies and gentlemen, today we're back. We're here with Andrew McGrath. He is the CEO of Maira, and he is also a major growth advisor at Darwinian Ventures, and also another person, another amazing CEO and connection I have made through Darwinian Ventures. So from your side, Andrew, let's get right into it. Who are you? What do you do? And why should anybody listen to you for the next hour?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? Andrew McGrath. I'm over here in San Francisco. I've been doing the whole startup scene gambit for a few years now. Actually got my start in business running a small jewelry store where we did imports, exports for like precious gems, but that got shut down during COVID because it was a little hard to get shipping containers stateside. So that led me into real estate for a few years. That's where I really learned like human to human business interactions,
Yeah.
and also all the fun stuff that goes into contract law and all the various systems needed to hold a large org together. And I took that knowledge into running a prop tech startup, a very logical evolution. I was experimenting with coding for a while, was like semi-technical, but then AI kind of added a lot of jet fuel to that slow burn of a learning experience, and started a prop tech startup, Maira AI. We do like enterprise AI transformation for the real estate brokerage. And I'm also taking all of the combination of these skills and all the different marketing bits I've had to do over the years to actually add go-to-market value for our companies that we work with at Darwinian Ventures.
Lovely, mate. Lovely. So let's get right into it then. One thing that I've recognized very quickly, that you mentioned, you learned to sell the hardware. You did it face to face, which is, it's crazy how everybody wants to go back to face now and back to that in-person connection. And then to your point, you got inside real estate. You saw how broken the systems really are. So you built Myra, which we want to touch on. It's an AI employee you talk to like a person. And now the enterprise world is pulling you up market, right? There's a lot more of an opportunity. So today, what we're going to learn a little bit about what real estate taught you about workflow, where AI earns its keep, and where the human belongs in your go-to-market strategy. So let's go to the first question. You learned to sell face-to-face in a tough market, not behind a screen. What did that teach you that you couldn't learn any other way?
Well, I mean, it teaches you a lot of things about really like the actual human psychology of what sales and like go to market is. And there's this like old school boiler room wolf den, like what's the show, like Mad Men, like marketing style of like,
Yeah.
hey, Mr. Stupid Buyer, like you don't know what you don't know, like
Yes.
like I'm the man, I'm here to save you. And that just doesn't work, and it
At
only
all.
worked for like a short period of time, really. But the modern buyer of anything is very well researched and has access to any data that you really would be presenting them anyway. So what I learned from real estate is the way to be credible and the way to actually sell to another human being is more of like the concierge or credible advisor viewpoint or like role, where you are just bringing them your industry expertise, and if that leans towards you should work with me, that's fine, but you're more a wellspring or your wealth of knowledge is your value add, and coercion techniques and all these like marketing gimmicks are as dead as they'll ever be.
Mate, you couldn't have hit it better. So the first person that I was drawn to, who must have had the biggest SEO budget, at first was Grant Cardone. So imagine this, right? So I grew up in the US, and it was from 2001 to 2014. And my first seller I came up against, like who was on TV, is a guy called Dean Grazioso. I don't know if you know who Dean Grazioso is. He was a big real estate kind of guy, right? And then it leaned on to, when I was here, I was looking for source of knowledge, and I got into a sales job, and I was looking, how do I sell better? And I got in front of Grant Cardone and started to learn how to close and how all this garbage. And I became, honestly, like the worst salesman. I did well, but I became the worst, most obnoxious, annoying salesman until I met a proper sales director who kind of guided me towards buyer safety, how to actually manage a conversation. He got me into persuasion engineering and all kinds of new things. And it really does go to show you that, like, none of that stuff at all works unless you are like it does take a lot of coaching. So there's no shortage of AI in sales though, and it takes people from who've never closed a hard deal. So no, there's no shortage of AI in sales. Takes people from who've never closed a hard deal. Why should anyone trust yours?
Well, I guess like when it comes to actually closing deals, like talking numbers, I've been a part of like $100 million of real estate transactions on teams that were like never sued. So there's like credibility there. And then the never sued part,
That's
like
good.
for people outside of real estate, that sounds
Yeah,
wild, but like
yeah.
I trust me in real estate, there's a lot of lawsuits for stuff that are like generally above board. But yeah, I was part of teams that did everything perfectly, like learned from the best, was really grateful to have that access. Uh, and then transitioning out of real estate, I was actually part of a startup that didn't go anywhere. And a lot of people don't really talk about their losses, but there was a real estate development fund startup that wanted to do like tech plus real estate for venture funds and also for like real estate development funds. And I actually had to leave that startup because there was these ethical and moral concerns around what was needed to be disclosed. Anyway, there's a ton of contracting stuff left over from real estate. So I bring an experience of the contracting law, but really why people should listen, like all that's great, like sure, credibility building. Why people should listen nowadays is because 99% of the narrative out there comes from people who like haven't actually done enterprise go to market. There's a lot of like LARPs and grifters, and especially in the go to market space because you can hide behind a lack of results very easily. So there's a lot of like I would say misinformation, like AI psychosis, just like there's not a ton of people out there who are just going to shoot straight with you and say like, "Hey, AI go to market isn't what you think it is. Go to market plus AI, great, but the whole concept of like you can do like Vappy plus Twilio plus like plug it into your Zapier so it automatically updates your CRM and like selling this dream that like you never have to talk to other humans to make money is just like fundamentally asinine. And I will be the one to call it out that like you need to talk to other humans to make money. Your business is a group of other humans. Your business is going to do business with other businesses, which are other groups of humans. And if you let that muscle in your brain atrophy, which is the I talk to other humans muscle, you're doomed. And that muscle is going to atrophy really quick the more you outsource to these LLMs.
Look, I think you're right with that too. So you don't know a single person who became a realtor to do paperwork. So when did annoyance tip into I'm gonna build something that fixes all of this?
Well, yeah, I think it comes across instantly just in these past like 10 minutes that I'm a pretty like feisty person, and my acceptance for the status quo is near zero. So the whole like this is the way it's been done before, so that's why we do it, just is a complete mental fallacy for me. Like I don't. Of course, there's like decorum, and there's like there's plenty of long-standing research. Like I'm not saying to like completely throw out the baby with the bathwater here, but that being said, there's plenty of room to reinvent, and I think the frustrations came mostly from seeing actual conventional Silicon Valley advice play out, which is really interesting because it wasn't Silicon Valley. I wasn't in Silicon Valley. I was in Marin doing real estate. But the Silicon Valley advice for a company and a startup is to create a wedge and stick to it and then expand from there. And what I was experiencing as an end user was 15 companies who had established their wedge and only solved 1/15 of the workflow by design. That was their whole conventional SaaS model, was we solve this problem. Well, me as the end user, I now have an aggregation problem. I now have 15 tools with 15 data sets. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the 1980s, we had Wall Street and the stock market, and they were both sending fax machine letters and like tube mail. And we fast forward to 2026, Wall Street has high frequency quants that can basically predict the temperature on a different planet based on what soybean futures are doing versus right, like it's like the most like more like the most technologically complex stuff on planet Earth versus
Yeah.
real estate is literally still fax machines. To this day, there's a fax machine in the office I worked in. So there's a huge disconnect there where you have a bunch of systems, you kind of have this like SaaS era, and then it's built on top of a really shoddy legacy system that's like paper records and like humans doing business the way they've done it, and now tech is getting introduced. So it was just like I was uniquely positioned to see that friction point and then have the
Yeah.
like understanding of like how like what does the fix actually look like.
That actually leads us perfectly to into the next question, because it's why build for real estate first? Was it the actual pain itself, or was it because it was a world you actually knew?
Well, yeah, like it didn't. It started super selfishly. It was just like, hey, I need this, and if I'm gonna continue doing real estate, I am gonna need to solve this problem, or I'm going to burn out. And I think that's how a lot of people start. And then you have like five friends being asking you like, hey, what is this? And then, kind of the gears start turning, and you're like, wait, I know 500 realtors, and they all have this problem. Oh, and there's 1.5 million of them in the U.S. that all have this problem, and everyone's still in SaaS mode. So the whole like we build SaaS, it solves this problem, and we're gonna like slap an AI on top of it, and then call it
So
like an AI
annoying.
platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't really need 15 platforms, and I certainly don't need 15 platforms that have 15 different AI agents with different context too. Like, it's actually just exacerbating the problem I was feeling. So
Yeah.
the transition really came from like a gap in the market that wasn't being serviced that I was feeling every single day, and just like the overlap of the worlds of like people who can write code and people who can sell real estate is like five people, and they're all doing the same thing I'm doing. So there's plenty of other companies out there like Breezy and like other like Ryan Serhant, like there's guys who are trying to marry AI and real estate out there. It's obviously the how it's going to be done in the future, but there's seriously like five of us.
Wow. So, well, look, it's how you got here, right? It's how you got to Myra. So let's get inside that. I think the biggest thing that stood out for me is every tool says AI powered. Like, I've even removed that from my business. You say Myra is an employee, not a tool. Why does that distinction actually matter?
Well, yeah, I think it positions it appropriately as an operational layer where, like, I've never met someone who's a HTML evangelist, but the entire world runs on HTML. And, I've never met someone who's like an ISO, 122 like fanatic, but the entire banking system runs on these rails. So with AI, like when the hype fades, what is AI? It's going to be the actual like rails that a lot of this human commerce runs on, and positioning AI as a tool, I think kind of neuters the AI and like the perception of what a tool is like it's just there and like you pick it up and use it and put it down. Whereas an employee talks a bit more to the statefulness and persistence of like what continual workflows look like. And a lot of people have
Yeah.
never really experienced that yet. So it feels like sci-fi. Uh, but that's the main distinction. It's like positioning it one layer below where it's like this is the operational layer of our platform, but also like what society will be very soon, and it's a persistent stateful agent that is actually doing work while you're not there, whereas a tool would be like you need to do it.
So if we go to the next piece, which is really interesting, I love this piece. You made it a voice first, no app, talk to it from the car. So why is voice the right call and not another dashboard?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. There's like one word that I'm obsessed with, and it's ergonomics, and it's the study of how humans touch things. Basically, it's like how do you interact with things, and it's designers spend tons of time on ergonomics when they're doing product design. But in tech, we don't really talk about ergonomics really at all. But the surface area and the interaction face, I mean, Apple talk about someone who's nailed ergonomics. But
Yeah.
in tech, we don't really have that like understanding of like human malleability. And to get less conceptual here, the hard piece of data was that realtors are generally not super high tech, and we wanted the tech to be really approachable. So if you can add a contact to your phone and dial it, you can now plug into our entire system, which like any realtor can do. That is the baseline qualifier of being a realtor. Is like, do you have a pulse and can you dial? Cool, you're a realtor. Here's your license. No, I'm being facetious here, but the point stands that the accessibility and ergonomics of the tech is really really important when you're trying to deploy high tech into low tech industries.
So I want to ask you. All right. So after that, you've now built this world that you're living in, and you're being pulled towards it. But there's another calling, and there's more money, and there's a bigger market in enterprise. So when did you realize the bigger demand with enterprise was upmarket?
It's actually really funny. It's completely accidental, but because I was like laser focused, my world was real estate up until recently. It was all I knew. I didn't have it on my radar.
Yeah.
We had conversations internally of like obviously this applies to more than real estate. Oh yeah, maybe we'll get there eventually. Like we were still following the conventional Silicon Valley like focus on your wedge, and our wedge was real estate. But when we were doing our pre-seed round for Myra, we had about 5 or 6 VCs ask us if they could use Myra. And we were a little confused at first, but they pattern recognized something from their thousands of pitches that we hadn't seen as young founders, which is this actually solves the VC's problem, which is they're jumping between many meetings with many different contexts, and no two deals are the same. And it really was an eye opener because we're like, wait, this maps directly one to one with the real estate thesis. There's people, there's contracts, there's many people in the loop, there's people jumping in and out, like there's vendors, there's like side deals, there's addendums, there's like all this stuff. We're like, okay, wait, that is one to one. Where else does this apply? And we realized, okay, private equity, venture capital, general contracting. And then we're like, okay, so this is still fairly wedged down. Salesforce started in a very similar way, and I'm not saying it's like I'm not trying to compare myself to Salesforce here, but the conventional strategy of like go to market with something super narrow and then see where the wind takes you is really where like we were just following demand. We were following the dollars and the signed contracts at the end of the day.
But it's really interesting when you get there, though, right? How does it feel now that you are playing in the enterprise space? Does it feel more challenging? Does it feel the same? What kind of is your impression so far?
I'm really glad that we're eating our own dog food because if I didn't have a system that was like aggregating and keeping all of this in line for me, the main differences are like the deal cycle is longer, the stakeholders are more plentiful and involved later, and there's a lot of like sequential decision making that happens before you're actually at any signed deal. So there's a lot of context tracking across those deals that wasn't necessarily there when we were in a more like direct to teams setting. So that's the main shift. Also, the other main shift is bringing on people who are much more experienced in that space because I can walk the walk, I can talk the talk with realtors all day. But for our actual enterprise, like we're selling to Fortune 500s, I'm happy to admit when I'm outside of my wheelhouse, and I think a lot of founders uh, should maybe take mentality that you should always be hiring people better than yourself. So that's the main mindset shift there, going from the relatively small pond of real estate into general enterprise.
What do you think is the hardest thing you've come up against while you've been building your company?
I mean, the hardest part about building a company is just being a human. There's like there's a lot of stuff outside of the company that needs constant attention, i.e. my breakfast that's sitting here half eaten from 5 hours ago, that I haven't been able to eat because I've been on back-to-back calls. So like kind of jokingly, but the hardest part of doing any of this for any founder is the delta between your efforts and your results. And it's the valley of death, and everyone feels it. And it is so long and so hard, and you show up every day for 5 no's and a kick in the teeth on a good day. And you're going to do that for like a year. And everyone is going to tell you crazy, and everyone who actually cares about your well-being is going to try and intervene because your mental health is going to take a hit. And like my finances took a huge hit. My mental health, I mean, I fell off going to the gym. When you're all in and you're fanatic, it raises alarm bells for like it should for yourself and other people because it's like truly insane. But if you have the conviction to do something like that, you need to do it because it's just going to eat you alive if you don't. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It's very true. How do you kind of recommend then that founders manage that stress? So you've said it. You've some of the things that you usually do in life, they take a back seat. And I remember I've gone through so many phases from like 2014 to 2026 where my body went up and down, my moods went up and down, my mind went up and down. And 2020 is when I started a business, and then I really got accustomed to like financial problems, like big ones. And I remember having a conversation with a guy. He sold his company for 135 million. At that time, I thought 135 million was a huge amount of money until I started to check out what these guys are doing now, 935 billion, right? And he told me, he goes, Shane, you did not invent the problem of money. I just want you to know that. You are on my ass about payments, but you did not invent this problem. Do you know how many people are going through exactly what you're doing? And at that moment, I was just like, everything literally went like, wow, yeah, you know that like people struggle, but to understand that is really hard. And then my biggest wake up was when I was always kind of on my business, everything had to be perfect. And then when I worked with another business and saw how like the patience of waiting, how things can compound and the efforts can compound, and you will get a big reward in the end, that was really, really apparent for me. Like I really, really saw that. But it changes so much because you don't know how to deal with it, right? You don't know how to deal with it. But to my the point I'm making is, through all of those ups and downs and all my roller coasters, like I had to go through rock bottom 3 or 4 times in my life, the one thing that kept me sane and has kept me on track is the gym. Because I need, like, even before my day starts, I'm not a ritual like 5 a.m. person. I don't start my day till like 11 a.m., 12 p.m. in the afternoon, honestly, because I wake up at a decent time, but I go to the gym, I take my fucking time, I relax, and then when I'm ready to start work, because nothing's calling, like, unless you've got meetings, nothing's actually calling you right there, like, you have to be here. And if you just plan your shit properly, and you maintain the control, like, you live in a place of a lot of truth, and then you can still maintain that sanity. Now, your marriage and your kids and all that stuff, like, that's a fucking whole nother story. What do you recommend founders do to keep them, or even for yourself, what do you think you found to be working really well for you when you want to give up?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was 18, I was doing it to get rich. I think that's why everyone starts.
Yep, right? And then you get money and you're like, wow, I don't feel anything.
Yeah, now that I've like built the muscle, built the habit, am in it as a lifestyle, couldn't see myself doing anything else. I think the thing that keeps me going is the 1% better every day mindset.
Yes.
Where marginal increases, marginal improvements, and they snowball really, really hard. and it's a hockey stick shaped graph. And that's the same thing that we were just talking about, where like your efforts every day you show up and show up at your best. And whatever your best is, whether that's hitting the gym and then starting at 11, or if you're one of those like grind set guys who needs red light therapy at 5 a.m., like whatever your ritual is, do it and get 1% better every day and show up. And the main thing, dude, I'm not dialed the way I should be, but I wake up relatively early, but nothing crazy, you know? And then the main thing is I set my first 30 minutes of the day, no phone, and it's exactly what I want to be doing. And it's very important for me to get like good sunlight in my eyes, get some sun on my skin, stretch a little bit. I do like a little lymphatic drainage massage, like whatever your thing is, do it. And it's less so about doing it for the results of whatever you're doing. In my mind, it's to start the day on your own terms, not reactive. Because on the days that I start my day coming from my energy and coming from a place of like, okay, I'm centered, I'm grounded, I'm ready to go, let's do it, I show up in a way that is so much more powerful than if I start the day just like on my phone or like, oh God, I already have like this email. That energy, I swear, goes throughout the whole day and it'll continue to compound. So like your 1% worse every day compounds too. So those are the main mindset things that keep me going.
Well, it's important because a lot of people are in this, like, think about it. Everybody is looking at it now. I can become a millionaire with AI. And everybody wants to be a business owner. Everybody's selling something. And you've got to be able to cut through the noise, but you also have to be able to control yourself. And for anybody listening, it is not an easy game, right? And you have to have some really tough, thick skin because everything around you, like there's just so many times where everything around you crumbles. It literally crumbles and you're watching it crumble, but you're just right there. And I was at that point of like everything was crumbling and just this one thing happens, this little thing happens and it just goes boom. And then you carry on doing it. And the worst thing to do is win and stop. I've learned that very quickly. So if we take it a step forward and we forget all of that stuff, if we get the pitch, where is AI making the most measurable impact in a business today, not in 2 years?
The most measurable impact today is generally way simpler than what founders think it is. The biggest impact today is being able to pull, 10 years of contracts into context and query it, or check if addendums are missing from old contracts, or see when start dates, hire dates, and promotions actually kicked in and if they were billed or invoiced properly. Like a lot of the grandiose, we're going to solve all of the world's problems companies, I think are going to look a lot like a .com flash in the pan pretty soon here, because a lot of the foundational unlocks that people are experiencing are what's your ramp time as an employee. And I don't mean hiring. I mean, you sit down to your laptop, you have 10 tasks you need to do today. Two things. How long does it take to start each task? And how long does it take to switch in between them? And I guess three things. How hard is it to find any extra data or plugins needed to fill out that task? So reducing the friction to start, continue, and switch on workflows that people are already doing, that's not some crazy, like, we're going to reinvent the entire future of business company. That's just a simple data aggregator connector that really a lot of people already have access to.
Of course. So what do you see as being the optimal day? So, and what I mean by that is, so we will have our own rituals, but if you're building a workforce, right, and the future of work, you need to be able to mobilize a team from the moment that person wakes up. Imagine they work from home, the moment they wake up and then to the moment they get to their desk to execute consistently throughout the day to achieve maximum productivity as a business owner, that's one thing, right? The second piece is if they're in the office and you're having them come to the office and then you can see them, but then they still have to execute a structured day. And everybody, this is the thing, everybody has their own way of structuring their day. How do you imagine the perfect day for the perfect worker to be executed? And what I mean by that is the example, walk me through. I get at my desk, no matter where I am. What's the first thing I should see on my screen?
Well, yeah, I guess it's a little different for everyone, but it definitely touches on these concepts of like ergonomics. Depending on the role, whether they're a seller or not, I think the answer should be the first thing they see on their screen is a dynamic dashboard that surfaces the data that they actually log into the platforms for. So like we all have a bunch of platforms, but realistically you log in and like you look at this chart here and like you pull this list here. So the ideal, like you turn on your laptop and all of that should be aggregated in one screen. And I'm a big fan of gamified systems because I think it lets people get 1% better every day, especially if you make it like literally the objective. And you can work in these gamified structures into these AI platforms very easily and do it in a way that actually is aligned because, like employees are hyper concerned that they're getting worked extra hard to get all the data extracted from them and then laid off. So they're getting ground down to the nub, like extra hours, long hours, and then they're going to get laid off because their whole workflow has been cloned. And then the employer or the management has a very different concern, which is other companies, most importantly their competitors, have already cracked this problem and that their market share is on quicksand. So there's two like very different but very real concerns. And I think in between those concerns is where these platforms need to live, which is actually having alignment between upper management, middle management, and the people who get the work done at the ground level. Like having alignment there through a system where directives are flowing and reporting is happening. The perfect day, and I know I'm speaking very abstractly here. The perfect day is you log into a platform that's built for you and do work that is directly flowing through data pipelines that don't require complex handoffs or too many people in the loop because the data's already circulating.
Yeah.
And the ideal workday for anyone is never having to ask, where does this live? Like, how many calls have you been on? How many pointless this should have been in email meetings have you been on? And it was really just wrangling off and admin stuff. And it's like, wow, I did not need to be on this one. This was strictly for the... and like, no joke, we talk to orgs and they say 20% of their total time and money is going towards these like meetings about meetings or business about business, where realistically the perfect workflow, the perfect workday is no meaningful stand-up or no meaningless stand-ups, no random this should have been in email meetings because so-and-so lost the spreadsheet. And they could actually just sit down and be deployed. And when they're deployed, there's a list of things that they can be working through. They can prompt the AI can prompt them back. They always feel like they're in the loop because there's always this kind of like guardrail of like, here's what you should be working on. But they still have full control over the platform to do the work they do and like leaning into that ergonomic approach.
Wow, you think you hit it nice, hit it very nice on that one. So one thing that I've read a lot on is your own blog, and you say that most AI adoption in real estate fails. You sell AI yourself. Where does it still fall flat?
Yeah, I think McKinsey coined the term, but it's pilot purgatory. And it's every single company out there on planet Earth, unless you're, already behind, is very aware that they need to figure out how to do AI. But they're also very aware that the cost of replication and in-housing things is the lowest it's ever been. So they're kind of torn whether they should go with a vendor or they should in-house it. So they're piloting things. They're kind of looking for the solution. Okay, our IT department's already redlining, and we don't really have budget to build it in-house. So we should look for a solution. But then all of the solutions out there are basically just SaaS tools with an AI sidecar. So there's this like big sell of like they hop on the sales call and it's like, hey, Mr. Real Estate CEO, this is going to change your entire life, and it's going to, like, all your employees are going to love you, and you're never going to have any attrition because your company is going to be the best ever. And like they've heard it 10 times, but they're like, okay, maybe this guy is the one. And then they pilot, and it doesn't do any of the things it's actually supposed to do because it's just an AI agent that lives in a CRM. And then they churn on the pilot, and then they go and pilot again. And they will do this until they find a solution or in-house it, or have their entire market share taken by someone who's already figured it out.
That's painful. How much do you think companies are losing in terms of percentage when they're not doing these things?
I mean, I have no real idea. I do know that the long-term value of a decently performing realtor for their career commissions is hundreds of thousands of dollars if they're a top performer. So to have attrition from your top performers it is a real problem. It's not like we'll get to this when we get to it. If companies are losing personnel to other companies that are offering better work environments, and it's because they haven't adopted an AI solution that actually helps their employees get work done, it's a really fundamentally easy fix. It requires working with the right people, but there's a leak in the boat if your top talent's leaving. So it's not like a hypothetical issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you say relationships stay human. Where exactly is that line, and has it moved as models get better?
Yeah, where the line has moved a little bit on that is that models have gotten better at taking, like, their context windows way bigger. So if I have a million token context window of my writing style, models can nail my writing style. That's a new big unlock. So like your tonality and everything, like the ability to write good content and vet it and get it out there is easier than ever. I think there's a lot of people just throwing Claude 4.8 stuff over the finish line and not actually putting their own spin on it. Or honestly, Claude can be the finished product for a newsletter or something if you've done a ton of context engineering on the front end to give it all the right data and like have it be meaningful and valuable. But in sales and go to market in general, the human should be the champion. And I think a lot of companies that want to do like AI BDRs and other similar things are maybe missing the point a little bit, where having a human face-to-face interaction will never be commoditized. But all admin work that supports those interactions is commoditized. So what I saw from real estate is that the best realtors all have one thing in common, and it's that their clients feel like they're the only client. But to be a realtor, you need to have a few hundred people in your book of business at any given time. You need to have 10 active clients. You need to have a few active deals in the air at all times. So it's really the act of like, how do you make all admin work seem seamless? And there's actually, this is a bit of a tangent, but there's an ancient concept of this, and it's the Japanese tea ceremony. And the Japanese tea ceremony is this very ornate, ritualistic, very, very like performative, but in a beautiful way thing where it's all to the nines. Like the tea leaves are perfect. The lemon is from the tree outside and is cut fresh that day, and it's all supposed to be this production, but it's all supposed to look effortless. The art of the tea ceremony is that it's all supposed to be this completely smooth, effortless, this is just how you live your day to day, but it's fit for a king. And that concept of like, how do you position AI in sales and in human interactions, it's to make the tea ceremony. The human should show up and everything should look effortless. Like I spent all my time that morning on my hair and my blazer being pressed because all my admin was done. And as you can tell, that's not how this morning went. But that's the goal, right? Like you show up, you're perfect. You have your briefing. You have all your key talking points. You've extensive research on like who you're talking to. You feel confident, well researched, and prepared. And you do that on 10 back-to-back calls with zero time in between. That's where like AI is a huge unlock for human productivity and sales. It's like, okay, how do I make it that I don't need 30 minutes in between each sales call to like decompress, redigest, let's get the notes in the CRM, blah blah blah. Like I never want to touch a CRM again, and I don't. So that's where you position AI is to make the human the champion of the tea ceremony.
Mate, I think that's a perfect example. So in a GTM stack, where do you insert the human then, and where do you let AI run? From the wins that you've seen, where do people actually get it wrong?
Where do people
So
get
answer the
wrong?
first question. So let's answer the first
Yeah.
one first. Where do you insert the human, and where do you let AI run?
Well, I think you insert the human in the place of authority, curation, and taste, specifically for go-to-market marketing, because there's a very human curated like there's a lot of like intangibles that AI just doesn't touch to
Hmm.
make the right marketing piece, the right narrative. There's so much nuance of like you're looking at every sales call your company's ever had and like okay, like what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
AI isn't really good at that and probably never will be because the data that actually exists in those data sets is a culmination of info that isn't in the actual numbers. And anyone in sales knows exactly what I'm talking about there.
I want to
So,
stop you on that. Sorry, just because I will get back to that question, but this is what one of the questions I forgot to ask you. What do you do in that situation? You've just said it perfectly. What do you do in the situation where a company that you want to help and help them optimize, improve, they have bad data? And then the follow up question to that is, in a real estate agency, what is the level of hygiene in the data in a real estate agency?
yeah, I mean it's probably no surprise to anyone, but CRMs are not the treasure trove of data that they are made out to be, because it's telephoned recounts of calls that are maybe through rosy tinted glasses as well, depending on if you're the one
Yes.
putting the data in versus if it's someone who reports to you. So there's always going to be messy data. There's going to be sharp data. Sharp data is like industry specific, hard to manage, uh, very large, blah blah blah. Sharp data is not that hard. It's the squishy data that is the hard stuff, which is the so and so has zero naming convention in their files, or like so and so books meetings constantly and just titles them sync. So there's always going to be some like data in there that's not great. The great thing about what we've developed is we're actually able to like correlate that data and kind of reverse engineer a lot of it and thread it through um, like methods that allow us to understand what the bad data is and isn't. And the great thing about working with a company is you could just ask them questions. I think people lean into fully agentic too hard and too early, where okay, the first five questions the AI asks you are not going to be about business. They're going to be about data cleanliness and process. There's plenty of situations where when we're looking at the data set that's being ingested, there's things that are flagging for us as humans that are very obvious to like, okay, clearly there's a consistent naming convention here, but it doesn't pertain to anything. So like the AI will see it and be like, yes, consistent naming convention, great. So you can clarify a lot just by actually being on prem and like being forward deployed during these, or if not forward deployed, at least available during these AI rollouts.
All right. Well, someone listening wants real AI value this quarter, and they're listening to us today, not a science project. What's the one move they make this week?
I would say the one move that you make this week Like you can make this like do this now, and by the time you're done watching like this or your next video, it'll be done. Go into Claude or your AI of choice. For this example, we'll use Claude and say like, give me all of your context on everything that I use you for. Assess my weak points. Assess where I ideate overly and don't ship, and assess where I throw things over the finish line early when they should be assessed more deeply, and then tell it to build you a custom skill that you can use in your planning phase that helps you self-correct your own LLM psychosis. Because like the problem with AI is it's really easy to dive deep on nothing, and it's really easy to build nothing and ship
Yeah.
nothing. So having your like building systems, scaffolding, frameworks, and guardrails into your own AI stack now to make sure that you don't waste a week in the future going off in the weeds because some new open source thing dropped that maybe is a better way of doing it. Like, don't fall for the shiny object syndrome. AI moves really fast. There's always shiny objects. And even if you're building all day, every day, you're still behind. So get that out of your head. And then really, like, use your AI skills to assess your AI workflow. Like, self-diagnose and self-correct now. Because I could tell you to go, like, do something new, try something new, blah, blah, blah. Stop doing that. That's my advice. Stop trying the new things. Dive deep on what you have and build out an actual workflow that you can measure how many minutes or hours it's saving you a day. Because otherwise, it's all just kind of for show.
I think that is a perfect way to wrap up the show, and it's what not to do. Everybody is trying to tell you what to do, which is like a millionth person, but this is a great way to not do. Case in point, we've lost deals because of a company not having the right data, ready to make a move. A CRO hire comes in 3 months into the sales process and says, your data doesn't match up. Even though we can fix the data, they're not doing anything about it, and that can be problematic if you are going to be in that position yourself too. So any last words? Where if somebody wants to find you, work with you, learn more about you, where do they go?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Andrew McGrath. There's a ton of us on there. So I'm the one with the black and white profile picture. That's probably the best way to reach out to me these days. We do have some really fun things that are in the works that'll kind of a little too early to share, but stay tuned. And I do have, for anyone who wants more value for free, there's the Enterprise AI Playbook on my LinkedIn. It's a weekly newsletter, and it is focused solely on giving value that's actionable for how to use AI in business.
Beautiful. I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. Thank you, Andrew, and that is a wrap. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this episode and staying here the whole way through. If you like what you saw, click subscribe. It'll take you 2 seconds. It helps me reach amazing guests and deliver valuable content for you. And if you ever want to find out what we do as a business, go to www.gorevintel.com, and that is the place where we help you make decisions that are backed by intelligence, and it's for founder CEOs. That's it for me for now. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.